All right, Adam.
Hey,
This is crazy.
we're together.
We are actually like in the
Physically.
same room right now. I
First
am
time.
so excited about this. Our travel schedules just happened to match up that it made more sense for us as we're crisscrossing the country to actually show up and just do this. So we both way overpacked. If you could see below the camera, we both tore apart our offices. We brought everything here to talk about how to run for school board. This one is a core training for me. We spent a lot of time developing it. What's different about our program is we get into the mindset of how to be a candidate. This is a critical piece of this in that we all just jump in and run in a lot on how to run for school board. And yet we don't have that other part around us, that what am I thinking about, what's my mindset, where's my process? Because I've worked in politics before, help people run for campaigns. You have as well. You've done some school board campaigns.
Yeah.
You were telling me one beforehand. What happened?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that stands out to me is this story about my calculus teacher. When I was in high school, I had one of the best calculus teachers, and so a few years later, she called me up after she'd retired, and she said, "Adam, I want to run for school board." And I thought, okay, well, I asked her two questions. The first question was, why do you even want to run?
Yeah.
Why is it that you want to run? And then being a good consultant, I naturally had to ask her, how much money do you have in the bank? And she said, not a lot. And that's why I love our program so much, is because there's a quote that I always go back to. It's an organized minority can beat an unorganized majority. It doesn't matter how much your opponent has. It doesn't matter what resources they have. If you organize and you focus and use the program that we have, you can ultimately be successful in it.
We see this all the time. Turnout, turnout, turnout. That's been the biggest piece of it. Now, this training as a whole is 4 separate sessions.
Yeah.
We do it over the course of a day. We have used these sessions for people who are running for a small town, maybe 3 or 4 towns have a regional school district where there's 2,000 people in the population. And we've talked to people who need to raise nearly $1 million to run for their campaign. And they use the same tactics that we bring in here. In fact, before we even start this training, and this is something I want everybody to think about right now, I'm going to put this up on the screen. This is one of our pieces. You have a free training where we ask a few dozen questions on here. These are the basics. We get right into it with how many registered voters are in my district. Do I understand my constituency? What are we looking at here, right? What do I want the primary animating issue to be? How do I stay on message? This is 2 pages of this, and this is something that we start out with. I actually printed off a whole bunch of the pages of, this is a physical sheet that you get before the training where, what does a school board race in your typical area have outside the district for endorsements or money? What percentage of students attend district schools, charter schools, private schools, alternative schools, home schools, and micro schools? We start off before we even go with the basics, with the key pieces. Who am I running against?
That's always a good question to ask. It's nice to know that.
We ended up one time, I was told this story that 2 people who turned out to be in the same district showed up for the same training. On the way out, one of them was the candidate, one of them was the campaign manager. They both realized they agree on everything that's important for how they change their community.
Yeah.
So that's just the pre-work. That gets us into this mindset. And as we start our first training, which we titled Becoming the Candidate, you come in with all these questions answered. Actually, not even all the questions answered.
Right.
We come with about 2/3 of the questions answered. And we give space and we bring all of our trainers in to do this, to say, what don't we have? What information don't we have yet? So then we can move on.
Right.
Because that's the mindset we want when you start out of, who becomes the candidate? How do I? One of the questions on this is, I apologize for looking down, but is my family supportive? Am I willing to subject them to a modern day campaign? And what will I and my family do when the campaign gets nasty?
Yeah, I mean, those are really important questions to ask, especially if your family maybe is politically opposite of you. A lot of times people don't think about that. Why I love this pre-work is so many people get really fired up about one issue, right? You have one thing that you're like, oh my gosh, I have to change this. How do I do it? I got to run for office, right? And then they start to, they ask these questions. And to give you an example, I was actually training this in Ohio one time, and I was asking some folks, I was like, why are you running? Why are you running? And this guy was like, oh, because of the bathroom problem. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Is the plumbing really bad in the schools? Mm-hmm. And because I knew that he was passionate about more than just fixing the bathroom issue in his school. But I said, why is it that you're really asking? As I began to dig in, he said, because as a parent with a daughter that's going through these schools, I want to ensure that she's getting the best education possible. I want to have a hand in impacting what she learns, so that way not only her, but every kid has the best opportunity. I said, well, that's why you're running. That's a message that's going to resonate at the doors, not some bathroom problem.
Right. I mean, that could be anything. It could be the plumbing. It could be funding. It could be accessibility. It could be number of bathrooms. That's not the reason you're running.
Right.
And a lot of people will come in and say, well, I'm running because of the budget.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
Well, what's the budget? And we actually go through that. We have an entire page in the workbook. There is a 30-page workbook with resources you can go to, national links that will send you to school districts all over the country, talk about where to register, how to do the paperwork, all sorts of resources for you in that workbook. But it also says, why am I running?
Right.
And I'm doing this because, and I'm doing this because, and I'm doing this because.
Right.
That part of the training changes your perspective on that because you're driving truly deep down into that. And that's something we also teach people in part 2 of the why are you running is when you talk to people, ask them that. What matters to you at the school? Well, I'm worried about the budget. Why are you worried about the budget? Yeah. Well, I don't have any kids in the district, but this is a lot of money we're sending in. Really, it's a lot of money you're sending in. Why is that? And they keep driving and driving down till they realize I may not have kids in the schools anymore. But these schools matter because they're part of our community. The kids are out, they're playing, it's summer, they're riding around. We want kids that are growing and doing better, and that's a connection that we all make.
Well, and
so
especially
we teach you how to connect that.
Yeah, well, and especially at the doors. Mm-hmm. Like, I've door knocked. I know that many of the folks watching have probably knocked doors in their lifetimes. And if you walk to the door and your why is just to fix one issue, well, then I always ask them, well, what happens if that issue gets fixed tomorrow? I said, I guess I don't know. I still want to run. I said, you need something that really transcends all of these issues, because every person that you talk to is going to have some different complaint. It might be someone that says, well, why should I even care? I don't even, I don't have kids in the school district anymore. I said, well, you do have grandkids. No. It's like, well, do you pay taxes? I do pay taxes. Yeah, I do. So maybe let's look into some transparency about where your money's going. Or maybe it's the person that does have a kid in the school district and they say, well, I'm really concerned about what my students learning, or I'm worried about the administration or something like that. You're able to relate your why to all of these different things, because that's what transcends all of these different issues. You can say, one of my candidates, one of my favorite little taglines was, we're going to make this state top 10. And so everything that people asked about, it was like, well, what about education? Well, let's make it top 10. That's why I'm running. So we'll be a top 10 state. And I said, okay, well, what about, the roads? Well, we're going to make them top 10. What about the potholes? Every issue that someone had, he had an answer for as why he was running. And it, like I said, it transcended all of those different issues and was very successful.
I'm going to put up one of the pages up on the screen right now.
Okay.
That this is exactly what we're talking about. We use in a lot of our trainings, and this includes both how to run for school board, our grassroots advocate certification, and when you move on to the mobilizer and the leader certifications, we talk about Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
We talk about the golden circle. And in there is, you start with your why. And in a class that's live, or one we do virtual trainings over Zoom, we'll play the video of Simon Sinek saying, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Exactly.
He said once in his thing, like, a Zune was a superior piece of technology to an iPod.
Right.
Absolute, in every way, shape, and form. And the heads of Apple looked and said, yeah, it's superior technology. Yep, you don't care. They made a better product. They had their why down. They knew why you want to buy this. Mm-hmm. So we go deep into what is your why. And we spend a whole session on this. Why are you running? Why are you being that? what is that core thing that you want to change in your community? I did this in New Hampshire, and someone who came up that had run once before unsuccessfully and was thinking about running again came up, and he said, I love this. When I ran last time, I didn't have this articulated, I didn't have ready, and I ended up somehow talking about the income tax level in southern states in the early 1900s, and I don't even know what question I was asked, and I knew in that moment I was lost.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he's like, this has nothing to do with anything. I'm wasting my time. So now we get you locked into your message.
Yep.
We get you locked into that, being able to build it. Now, I want to move on to the actual campaign team.
Okay.
Because like I said, some folks, I've had people say, well, I need to secure 500 votes. I looked it up. There's about 400. Normally, people win 400 to 200. So if I can secure 500 votes, I'm good. I'm like, well, you still need a team.
Yes.
You still need a team around you. So what we have here on this list is who does what. Because a candidate has 3 jobs. Mm-hmm. And this is critical. A candidate has 3 jobs. You talk to voters, you raise money, and you stay on message.
Yeah.
Everything else you try to delegate.
Right.
So I'm going to pull this one up here really quickly, because this just shows you, this is your to-do list. You need to pick up the nominating paperwork. You need to create an election committee. You will need to open an account at a local bank. Now, some states vary here and there. Some have town, some have state requirements. But everybody has some level of tracking that you need to have for any kind of campaign donations.
Right.
So you want this separate account to be able to sit there, that's controlled separately, so when you have to pay for the website, when you may want to boost on social media,
When you want to buy literature,
when you want to buy
door-knocking
literature,
materials.
handout, yes, when you want to buy any of that, you're ready. Who can do that? When you're picking a theme, when you're creating your budget. This is actually only a portion of that full page that we go through of, if not you, then who?
Right.
Everything not related to those 3 things. Again, talk to voters, raise money, stay on message.
And I love this part of it too, because so many times I've had folks call me that have been running for office, and they say, hey, Adam, I'm doing this and this and this, and I just pull up this checklist.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, well, have you opened up an account at the bank to put all your campaign money in? He's like, oh no, I've just been taking donations left and right. I'm like, that could be a violation.
That could be a violation.
Let's go back through this, and without him even knowing it, I'm going through the checklist. Who's picking up the nominating forms? I guess I better do that. And going through, it's like, okay, well, let's take a step back. And this is really nice, because when you have that, it's your cheat sheet. Okay, am I supposed to be doing this, or someone else delegated this task? And then nothing falls through the cracks.
Yeah. And this also allows you to we give you the space in that training. We think about every different role. And like I said, we've had people from the largest city in the state and one of the smallest towns in the state in the same training, but they're able to work together to actually take the time to say, what do I need versus what do you need? And then as they go back and forth, both people say, wow, I feel better about this because I know I need it or I know I don't.
Right.
Or I can handle this or I can't handle this. And these 3 things, and we've talked a lot about already staying on message, that what is your why. These 3 things really resonate and are how we built out this 4-session module. Now this usually, when we do this at a state office, maybe we'll do it 4 nights in a row, maybe we'll do it every Tuesday for 4 weeks. Sometimes we'll feed you breakfast, we'll do a couple sessions, we'll feed you lunch, we'll do a couple sessions, and then everybody hang out after, let's connect, and that way you have people all over the state in a dozen different school districts, all that are communicating with each other. All people that have freedom and liberty in mind, want the best possible school system for their children and for the parents and for the community, working together all over the state. It's really cool. So the 4 sessions themselves, I really want to touch on that quickly. Becoming the candidate.
Right.
Why are you running? Messaging, and talking to voters and raising money.
Yeah.
Now, I got asked, why do we do that last? I had someone come in, he sat right down, and he said, I want to talk about raising money first.
Yeah.
I said, no, we do this last on purpose because we want to have the message down.
Yeah.
So I'm tempted to talk about the money now, but I'm going to skip it for a little bit, a bit here. because we want to have our message down. Because if we have our message down, if we know what we want to say, everything else becomes easier. Once we've targeted that, once we've had those pieces go in, then we know what we have. So,
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I've noticed from this training is a lot of times people are like, well, how do I talk to donors? How do I talk to voters? And I say, well, what's your message? And they're like, well, I'm just asking them for money to help my campaign. I said, well, then, let's go back to why are you running? And they're like, oh, that's a good point. So all of this tiers into the next thing. And each session, I think, is so critical because a lot of times, like you said, people get ahead of themselves when they're ready to run. And they absolutely, just go crazy. They like, oh, we got to knock doors. We got to do this.
Right.
We got to, I got to raise all this money in order to be successful. I said, well, you got to figure out why you're even running.
Right. Why are we doing that? And that actually relates to one of our other pages about challenge, choice, outcome and our public narrative model.
Right.
So we talk a lot about challenge, choice, outcome as well. This is another core piece that we've built, that we've brought into our trainings. This starts with the story of self. Why am I running?
Yeah.
This is then the story of us, all of us together, in the story of why it happens right now. And that ties in because you're not asking someone for a donation. You're asking them to come along in this story with you.
Right.
You are asking them to say, you are saying, I am running because of the future of this district. We have to change this now. And the reason it's now is this. Mm-hmm. So I need your vote. Will you volunteer? And will you join me in this campaign? So as we go through all this messaging, we just build and build and build to then you have your solid message. Now we can talk about fundraising. And we go out the door solid.
Yeah, and I think whenever I'm out knocking doors, the first question that people ask you at the door is, why are you running, right? Like, why are you even running for office? Because a lot of times people don't know when these elections are. Mm-hmm. School board elections are not that, first Tuesday in November kind of elections. They're in April, they're in February, they're in weird months that people are like, oh, we had an election today? I forgot about that one. And so you got to get people out, you got to drive that turnout, but it's about having the messaging. You've got to motivate the people individually to even go out and vote. It's not like there's some top of the ticket. Now, this isn't every area, but a lot of times it's like, oh, well, I got to go vote for president, and I vote for Congress, Senate, everything else.
And then I look down and I see, oh, there's Adam. Oh, I like Adam. I trust Adam. Adam should be on the school board.
Right.
No,
exactly.
These are off-cycle elections that are very low turnout.
Yeah. I think in my school district that I live in, the last time that we had an election, I want to say there's about 4,000 voters. And only about 13% of people actually turned out for the school board election.
School board, that's pretty high.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
That's because we were driving out turnout.
Yeah, I had a friend who was running, and this is a town that normally gets about 7,000 to 8,000 votes. Mm-hmm. And school board was about 2.
Yeah.
That's the difference. That's why if people are invested and bought in, and if you're on message, if you are staying on message, if you are clearly saying why you do it, then it works.
Yeah.
And I love that people are getting invested in the school board. I've helped close friends be elected to the school board. It's because, for me, I want them in there because I know they'll make the right decision and I know they'll help our children. This is not just, and I'm going to say something totally counter to what I'm about to say.
Right.
But this is one of the ignored things that a lot of people see. And this is how people can go astray from a lot of our founding principles in these schools. So if we have that, so we can cling to those ideas of freedom, of liberty, of innovation, of the power of markets. This is how, we talked just last week, Dave Johnson was on talking about the power of economic freedom. We need to make sure that the schools are teaching these things, that the kids have the opportunity to learn about the power of economic freedom. So these races are important.
Well, and to that same point, a lot of times people are like, I'm so worried about who the president is. And as much as, that has been in the media lately, that doesn't affect your day-to-day life as much as the education that your kids are getting. If you have a corrupt administrator, if the budget, if the school board currently isn't putting together a balanced budget and they're wasting your tax dollars, that's the first line of defense. And so many times I think my supervisor, Chris Steo, has looked into how many people start at these local smaller offices
Right.
and then work their way up? Maybe they run for school board and then they run for mayor. And the next thing you
Yep.
know, they're in the state house or the state senate
Yep.
and then they're running for Congress. But how many people get their start right here at school board? And that's why it's so important that one, we're electing good people and we have good candidates going through this process. But secondly, it's important that we show up and we vote in these elections because, like I said, this impacts, the education that my child's getting is way more important than almost anything else,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like for me personally, and if you can relate your message and your why back to that, then that's going to make the whole difference.
Yeah, we're out here. We do this because we desperately want this country to be better for the next generation. So I love one thing you mentioned because that's the whole counter to everything else that I said is running for higher office.
Right.
I've helped a lot of people who the first thing they run for is U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
Whew, that's a tough thing to do. It can happen, but it's tough. But when you start out at a school board and you make great change in your community, all of a sudden, and you fix the problems. Great,
Yeah.
things are going great. And now you have someone who wants to step in and take that next step for the school board that you can't. There's city council. There's your state legislature.
Yeah.
There's, if you have to, state senate. There's then into the U.S. Congress. And as you're doing this, you're building broader and broader because your why isn't just to the school board. Your why is broader. So as you're seeing that, and you have these skills already where you're comfortable and you can adapt those skills to that next office.
Right.
And that fundraising, that function. If you already have someone helping your volunteers and you have 10 dedicated door knockers who's been door knocking for you for years, there are going to be 10 people who are going to train the next set of door knockers for you. So you're going to be building this system and these people. And if they're like, wow, this is too big, I've been helping you for 4 years, I really can't, I can help the replacement come in.
Yeah.
And then we're ready to go. So one of the last things that I want to show on this is a list of what will you need. This is that same thing that someone from a large city and someone from a small district had wildly different lists.
Yeah.
Once they said, like, this is what I need. So this helps you get to that fundraising target of what money do I need? Do I need phone banking? Do I need direct mail? Do I need the door hangers? If it's small, you may be able to make all the phone calls you need without bringing in 10, 20 people and having to pay for all sorts of new phones.
Yeah, my hometown specifically, the races that I've worked on, going through this list, we were like, we just need to get doors because we need to target the right people. We maybe need to send a few postcards, a few handwritten notes, and then just have the candidate call the few hundred people that we know are actually going to turn out in this race. But then as I've trained this in other places, I know people are like, well, the only way that you can win is if you have this, or you have specific ads in the newspaper, or you've got money for direct mail, because direct mail is very critical in larger districts.
Yes,
but it all
it is.
depends on, how big is the district that you're running in, what's your budget, and how far can you take your dollar. Because my general rule of thumb is if it's not going to direct voter contact, it maybe isn't something that's needed, right? And we'll put that in the, in the maybe don't
In the
need,
might
right?
need, yeah.
Yard signs, those are fun, but yard signs don't vote.
Yeah. On the opposite side of this as well, since we want you ready to be able to take action, to really be thinking about what your next steps are, when we talk about volunteers, we have a place on that sheet where you can say, who am I thinking about? Who do I know that would be good at it?
Yeah.
Do you know someone who's a creative type who you can then say, are you willing to continue this creative for this? Or maybe they want to learn a new skill.
Yeah.
But on the other side of this sheet, you also have where are you starting?
Right.
Who are those first people that you can walk up to and ask for? And what we do to close out our training at the final session, and for a lot of our sessions, is we say, okay, this is the room to make the mistakes.
Yeah.
When you're at this training, I've seen it from everywhere from New Hampshire to Ohio to in the South, all over the country. The sigh of relief is like, okay, we're going to go try everything we did. We're going to have you talk about the golden circle. We're going to have you talk about your why. We are going to talk about the bad questions. I have one up here, I believe number 5. When you get asked those really rude questions, I believe the toned down version is, so when did you stop kicking your dog?
Yeah.
So you get that question and you say, well, I see, no, I'm not going to acknowledge that. What's important to remember, if we take, and this list is like 30 different things that you can use depending on you. So they all have a little bit of a different flair. Some are a little jokier, some are a little more serious. So you have this bank of 4 or 5 responses that you can dive into, like, how dare you ask that question? I'm not going to repeat it.
Yeah, I remember I was doing this training somewhere, and someone was like, there's no way that, people ask these kind of questions at this doors, and this lady in the back stands up and, holds her hand, and she's like, go door knocking with me one day, and we'll see how that turns out for you.
Yeah.
Because voters are crazy. I mean, voters, they ask some wild questions. Most don't.
That about me, yeah. Well, and that can happen. And some people, you never know. School boards are so important that they can get contentious.
Yeah.
And someone may try to set you up as a trap. Social media, no matter what social media app you're using, a short video of you making a mistake can happen.
Yeah.
So by using these skills, by utilizing it, and to circle back to that original point, you have the opportunity to be asked way out of left field questions and be prepared to answer them and make the mistake. You can awkwardly ask for someone to join you, someone to support you. Talk about all the pieces in it and then laugh at yourself, and then the other person comes back and do it. So you get that repetition of going again and again and again, and we give you the ability to walk out more confident than when you came in.
Right.
So we want you to have the skills, we want you to feel empowered, and we want you ready to go. Mm-hmm. That's what this program is all about, and that's what a lot of our how-to series has been as a whole. And what the Rolls Royce, the Cadillacs of programs are certifications, our grassroots advocate, mobilizer, and certification programs that we do all over the country. And I know we have a couple folks who are always on. I can't see the chat right now. We have a couple folks that are always on and always asking us, when are you going to do it virtual? One of the reasons we're here together is that's part of the conversation that I'm having tomorrow. We're crisscrossing paths. Tomorrow we're having that conversation about how do we do online certifications. Yeah. Maybe it's not the identical certification, but it's a certification that can empower people to be advocates and activists, mobilizers, and leaders in their community. So you have that. That's what we're working on. So if it was my friends that are in the chat that always ask, hopefully that helped. Thank you. But that's what we do. We want you to walk out of our trainings empowered to make a difference in your community, and this is one of those programs. Before we head off, Adam, anything else you want to add?
No, to the point about the advocate certification, I was just finishing up one out in Delta, Ohio, which is a town that I doubt many people in the chat have ever heard of. But one of our great activists there, Miss Bonnie, she went through our storytelling training, which we do a lot, and talking about her specific why. And she said, I've never really thought about it like this. I've always, just kind of done this because I know that's what I'm supposed to do, but I've never really gotten down to my why. And she goes, and you guys really unlocked, the ability for me to have deeper conversations with people, better conversations. Before people would say, what do you do? She's like, oh, I'm just an activist. I'm trying to, help fix the country. And they're like, oh, okay. It's uninspiring, right? But she was able to, through our training, learn how to better articulate her why, her messaging, to where now she's growing a group there in Fulton County that's, door knocking, phone banking, all because, she sat down, worked with us, and came together, figured out her why. So really exciting stuff.
Awesome. So glatraining.org.
Yes.
We have a calendar of upcoming trainings. If you don't see one in your area, we work in all 50 states. Join us, send us a message. I've had people, after these, I apologize, I get inundated. I reply to everybody I can. If you get missed, I truly am sorry. I will get to you. I promise. Send me another one.
Yep.
We have a couple. We're going to try to get more people into these boxes to check them out. But we'll see. We'll see what we can do about getting them all over the country to do these live trainings. Next week, Monday, in a week, so 6 days from now, we talked about Chris Steele earlier. Your supervisor,
yes.
My former supervisor, great guy, is actually going to be talking about something that's kind of very close to this, becoming a watchdog.
Yeah.
Where you go, how do you go to your city council meetings, to your school board meetings to understand what's going on and to make that change, to hold those elected officials accountable to either what they promised, to what they didn't promise,
Right.
and to the actual actions they're taking and what the results are, not just what they say they want the results to be, but what the actual results are.
Yeah.
So that's our Becoming a Watchdog training. That's going to be Monday in 6 days. I'm going to leave that up on YouTube after as well, so you can see that at any point. So please sign up for that. That should be up on our website as well. Go check that out. Sign up early so you can get a reminder for it as well.
Yep.
That's it. Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thank you.